Captain Lee Jun stood at the edge of the massive council chamber, watching hundreds of alien delegates take their seats. The New Geneva station rotated slowly in space, its artificial gravity keeping everyone comfortable. But Jun felt anything but comfortable today. He wore his best dress uniform, the dark blue fabric pressed and clean. The golden earth emblem on his chest caught the light from the chamber's crystal ceiling. Around him, creatures from across the galaxy chatted in their strange languages. Some looked like giant insects with clicking mandibles. Others floated in water-filled tanks, their tentacles moving in graceful patterns. The Ashkari delegates glowed with inner light, their crystal bodies throwing rainbow colors on the walls. Counselor Park Hana sat in the human section, her face calm, but her hands tight on her datapad. She had been Earth's voice here for 10 years. Jun respected her more than anyone he knew. She never lost her temper, even when the aliens treated humans like children. Dr. Kim Soo sat next to Park, taking notes as always. The small woman had dedicated her life to studying alien biology. She had helped save millions of lives across the galaxy. Yet many of the council members still called her work amateur efforts by a developing species. Admiral Choi Bin stood near the back wall, his arms crossed. His gray hair was cut military short and his dark eyes missed nothing. He had fought alongside alien forces in 3 different wars. Human tactics had won those wars, though the aliens rarely admitted it. In the observer section above, Engineer Yang Ho whispered something to Commander Na-Ri. Yang had designed the faster-than-light engines that half the galaxy now used. Na-Ri had led rescue missions that saved thousands of alien colonists from natural disasters. Both watched the proceedings with growing anger. The chamber fell silent as High Counselor Thekmore entered. The Vexthari leader moved on 6 legs, his blue-gray skin shifting color with his mood. Today it showed deep purple bands, the color of annoyance. His 4 eyes focused on the human delegation with obvious dislike. "We gather today," Thekmore began, his voice translated into hundreds of languages, "to discuss the Primitive Species Protection Act. This important law will help guide younger races away from their destructive habits." Jun felt his jaw clench. Younger races, destructive habits, the same words they always used when talking about humans. Counselor Morthek of the Morden stood up. The bear-like creature was twice as tall as any human, with thick brown fur and small black eyes. The humans have shown time and again that they cannot be trusted with advanced technology. They solve problems with violence. They take risks that endanger entire systems. "Agreed," clicked Vexhai of the insect-like Keltaran. "During the Sigma crisis, human forces used nuclear weapons against the Wraith ships. Such crude methods have no place in civilized warfare." Jun remembered the Sigma crisis. Well, he had been there. The Wraith Collective had been destroying entire colonies, their ships immune to standard council weapons. Human nuclear torpedoes had been the only thing that could penetrate their shields. Those crude methods had saved 40 million alien lives. Park Hana stood slowly. "Honored counselors, humanity requests the right to respond to these charges." Thekmore's skin shifted to darker purple. "The younger species will observe and learn today. This discussion is for established civilizations." Wave of clicks, chirps, and harmonic tones filled the chamber. The aliens were laughing, actually laughing at humanity's chief diplomat. Dr. Kim Soo kept writing in her notebook, but Jun could see her hand shaking with anger. Yang Ho leaned forward in the observer section, his face red. Na-Ri put a calming hand on his shoulder, but her own eyes blazed with fury. "The humans," continued Counselor Zarthul of the energy beings from Lux Prime, "have contaminated 17 star systems with their industrial methods. Their terraforming techniques are dangerous and unpredictable." Jun almost laughed. Those 17 systems now housed over 800 million beings of various species. Human terraforming had turned dead rocks into garden worlds, but the council called it contamination. "Furthermore," added the crystalline voice of Ashkari speaker Melyin, "human medical practices are reckless. They experiment on living tissue. They use chemicals that could poison entire ecosystems." Dr. Kim Soo looked up from her notes. "Jun, saw tears in her eyes. Her medical research had extended the lifespan of 6 different alien species. She had developed cures for diseases that had plagued the galaxy for centuries, and they called her work reckless. Admiral Choi Bin stepped forward. "Counselors, humanity has fought beside you in... The primitive species will remain silent." Thekmore's voice boomed through the chamber. His skin flashed bright orange, the color of rage. "Your military methods are an embarrassment to civilized warfare. You fight with passion instead of logic. You sacrifice yourselves for others like mindless animals." The chamber erupted in more alien laughter. June felt something break inside his chest. Mindless animals. That's what they thought of human courage, human sacrifice, human love for their comrades. Park Hana sat down heavily, her face pale. For the first time in her career, she looked defeated. The debate continued for hours. Every human achievement was dismissed as luck or accident. Every human innovation was called dangerous or primitive. The aliens spoke about humanity as if they were not even in the room. Finally, the vote began. Species after species voted yes on the Primitive Species Protection Act. The act would limit human expansion to 12 star systems. It would require council oversight of all human research. It would place human colonies under direct alien supervision. When they called for Earth's vote, Park Hana stood one last time. Her voice was steady, but June could hear the pain underneath. The United Earth government votes no. The final tally appeared on the main screen. 847 votes for the act, 1 vote against. Thekmore's skin shifted to satisfied green. The act passes by overwhelming majority. The human delegation will report to the compliance office within 30 standard days to begin implementation. June watched Park Hana gather her papers with shaking hands. Dr. Kim Soo closed her notebook and walked toward the exit without looking back. Admiral Choi Bin followed, his face like stone. In the observer section, Yang Ho and Na Ri were already gone. As the human delegation filed out of the chamber, June heard the aliens discussing their next agenda item. They had already forgotten about humanity. To them, the humans were just another problem solved, another primitive species put in its proper place. But as June walked through the station's corridors toward the human quarters, he noticed something the aliens had missed. Human technicians were quietly packing their tools. Human doctors were finishing their shift reports with unusual care. Human traders were making final calls to their contacts. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to be truly alone. 3 months after the vote, President Lim Wan stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt Seoul spaceport. Through the massive windows, she could see hundreds of human ships preparing for departure. Some were massive colony transports that could carry 50,000 people. Others were smaller vessels loaded with equipment and supplies. The morning sun cast long shadows across the landing pads. Earth looked peaceful from here, but wan new appearances could be deceiving. Across the planet, similar scenes were playing out. Every major spaceport was busy with preparation. Humanity was leaving the galaxy behind. One touched the communication device on her collar. The encrypted signal would reach every human colony, every human ship, every human outpost in known space. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice calm, but firm. "Today marks the end of our participation in galactic civilization. For 300 years, we have tried to earn our place among the stars. We have shared our knowledge, our culture, and our blood with species across the galaxy. We have asked for nothing but respect in return." She paused, looking out at the ships. Each one represented thousands of lives, millions of dreams. All of them were coming home. That respect has been denied. We are called primitive, dangerous, and destructive. Our contributions are dismissed as accidents. Our sacrifices are forgotten. Our very nature is seen as a threat to civilized society. Director Oh-min stood behind the president, coordinating the massive operation through his wrist computer. Reports flowed in from across human space. The withdrawal was proceeding smoothly. Too smoothly, perhaps. The aliens still did not understand. What was happening? Therefore, one continued, I am authorizing the Exodus Protocol. All human citizens are to return to Earth space immediately. All human assets in alien territory are to be liquidated or destroyed. All human knowledge shared with Council species is to be secured or eliminated. Captain Beijun received the message while docked at Morden Station. He had been trading with the bear-like aliens for 15 years. His ship, the Soul's Pride, was loaded with rare metals that would have made him wealthy. Instead, he walked to the station's trading floor and announced that all human trade agreements were now void. The Morden trader Graktul laughed when he heard the news. Humans cannot survive without galactic trade, he said. You will be back within the year begging for new contracts. Baijun smiled and transferred ownership of his cargo bay to the station. Keep it as payment for docking fees, he said. We will not be needing it where we are going. 2 sectors away, Dr. Song A was packing her medical supplies. She had been working on Ashkari Prime for 8 years, treating the crystal being's rare bone disease. Her research was close to a breakthrough that could save thousands of lives. She encrypted all her data and loaded it onto secure drives. The research would continue, but only in human space. The Ashkari had voted to restrict human development. Now they would learn what human development was worth. Her assistant, a young crystal being named Shell Lin, watched her pack with confusion. Dr. Song, where are you going? The cancer research is not complete. The children in the outer colonies still need treatment. Song A felt a sharp pain in her chest. She had delivered half of those children herself. She had held their parents' hands during the worst moments of their illness. But the choice had been made for her. I am sorry, Shell Lin, she said quietly. Find another way to save them. Humanity is no longer welcome here. Professor Kang Do worked through the night at the Central Research Station on Vexthari homeworld. His team was destroying 3 centuries of shared scientific knowledge. Every database was wiped. Every research note was encrypted beyond alien understanding. Every breakthrough that had been freely given was now taken back. The Vexthari had called human science reckless and dangerous. Now they would practice science without it. His research partner, a 6-legged Vexthari named Tekavol, tried to stop them. Professor Kang, this is madness. Our fusion research could power the entire sector. The medical advances could eliminate disease. Kang Do looked at his old friend sadly. Tekavol, your people voted to limit human research because they feared what we might discover. Now you will discover nothing at all. Trade Minister Yoon Seo sat in her office on Neutral Station, watching alien negotiators pace nervously around her conference table. They had come to discuss new trade agreements. Instead, she handed them termination notices. All human trade. Fruits are now closed, she announced calmly. All shipping contracts are void. All manufacturing agreements are cancelled. The Kelteran delegate clicked angrily. This is illegal. You cannot simply abandon your obligations. Yoon Seo leaned back in her chair. We are not abandoning anything. We are being removed from galactic society by council vote. These are merely the consequences of that decision. But our economies depend on human shipping, protested the Morden representative. 70% of our cargo moves through human trade routes. Then perhaps you should have thought of that before voting. To restrict human expansion, Yoon Seo replied, find another way to move your cargo. Humanity is done helping species that consider us a threat. Captain Jiang Wu commanded the last human transport leaving Morden space. His ship carried 8,000 human civilians, doctors, teachers, engineers, and their families. They had been living among the Mordun for generations. Now they were refugees from their own success. As they prepared to jump to hyperspace, Mordun security forces moved to intercept them. Human transport, you are ordered to stop for inspection. Council law no longer applies to us, Jiang Wu interrupted. We are no longer council species. The Morden tried to activate their detention fields, but nothing happened. Their security systems flickered and died. Emergency lights flashed red throughout their stations. Security Chief Han Sol had been thorough. Every lock, every barrier, every control system that humans had helped design over the centuries had been quietly sabotaged. The Mordun were trapped in their own stations while the humans departed. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Human doctors finished their final surgeries and disappeared in the night. Human engineers completed their last repairs and vanished with their tools. Human teachers held their last classes and left their students with empty classrooms. The aliens initially dismissed it as a tantrum. They believed humans would return within months, desperate for alien technology and trade. They did not understand that humans had been giving more than they received for centuries. Admiral Choi Bin stood on the bridge of his flagship as the last human warships gathered at the edge of Council space. Behind them, the galaxy they had helped protect for 300 years grew smaller. Ahead lay the unknown regions where humanity would build something new. "Admiral," reported his communications officer, "we are receiving distress calls from 17 different systems. Pirate attacks, wraith incursions, and system failures. They are requesting immediate assistance." Choi Bin looked at the tactical display. Red warning lights marked dozens of crisis points throughout Council space. For 3 centuries, human ships had responded to those calls. Human soldiers had died protecting alien colonies. Human engineers had prevented disasters that could have killed millions. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "We are going home." The communication officer hesitated. "Sir, the casualties could be enormous. The Sigma colony has less than 6 hours before their fusion reactor fails. The children's hospital on is no longer our responsibility," Choi Bin finished. "The Council has made their choice. Now they must live with the consequences." As the human fleet jumped to hyperspace, the last transmission from Council space reached their ships. It was from High Counselor Thekmore himself, demanding that human forces return immediately to fulfill their obligations to galactic peace. The message was deleted without response. 6 months later, humanity had vanished from known space as completely as if they had never existed. No human remained in Council territory. No human ship traveled the old trade routes. No human voice answered calls for help. The galaxy was finally free of the dangerous, primitive, destructive human species. And for the first time in 3 centuries, the aliens were truly alone. 1 year after the human departure, Foreman Crack stood in the middle of Factory Complex 7 on Keth Prime, staring at silent machines. The massive assembly line that once produced starship components lay dead and cold. Warning lights blinked red across dozens of control panels. The air smelled of cooling metal and stopped progress. Crax was a Mordun, built for heavy work with thick arms and dense bones. He had been running this factory for 20 years. In all that time, he had never seen it completely shut down. Even during the worst supply shortages or worker strikes, some part of the complex had kept working. "Run the diagnostic again," he ordered his assistant, a smaller Mordun named Griktar. Griktar's claws clicked against the control surface as he worked. "Same result, Foreman. The fusion welders need a specific frequency modulation that we cannot reproduce. The metal shaping requires a crystalline matrix alignment that our computers cannot calculate. The quality control systems use pattern recognition algorithms that we do not understand." Crax growled low in his throat. "These are our machines. We built them. We should know how they work." But even as he said it, he knew it was not true. Yes, the Mordun had built the machines, but the designs had come from human engineers. The techniques had been developed in human workshops. The processes had been refined by human experts who had worked alongside Mordun workers for decades. He walked to the main control room where Chief Engineer Thoknar was studying technical manuals. The older Mordun looked up with tired eyes. "Any progress?" Crax asked. Thoknar shook his massive head. "The humans took nothing when they left. All the equipment is still here. All the documentation is complete. But there are gaps in the knowledge. Steps that are not written down because everyone knew how to do them. Techniques that were passed from human to Mordun through years of working together." Crax looked at the production schedule on the wall. 300 starships were supposed to be completed this year for the Council Defense Force. So far, they had finished exactly 0. "What about the other complexes?" "Worse," Thoknar replied. Complex 12 has been shut down for 2 months. Complex 4 had an explosion last week when they tried to restart the fusion systems without proper calibration. 17 workers are still in the medical center. Similar problems were spreading across the galaxy. On the agricultural world of Harvest Moon, Kelterran farmers watched their crops wither in the fields. The soil enhancement techniques that had fed billions of beings required precise chemical mixtures. The humans had managed those mixtures for so long that no one else remembered the exact formulas. Farmer Chicktal stood in his dead cornfield, his mandibles clicking in distress. The golden plants that should have been reaching toward the sun were brown and twisted. The soil itself seemed tired. "The balance is wrong," he told his neighbor Vekshi. "The nutrients are not mixing properly. The microorganisms are dying." Vekshi scraped at the dry earth with one of her 6 legs. "Perhaps we should ask the council for help. They have databases, records of the old techniques." But when they contacted the Agricultural Council, they learned the truth. The databases contained only basic information. The real knowledge, the intuition about when to add which chemicals, the ability to read the subtle signs of soil health, the experience to adjust techniques for different weather patterns, had existed only in human minds. The medical crisis struck even faster. On Ashkari Prime, Healer Prime Zethkar watched helplessly as crystal farmers throughout the outer colonies succumbed to spore rot. The disease attacked the living crystal that made up Ashkari bodies, turning their clear surfaces cloudy and brittle. He had the formula that Dr. Song Ai had developed to treat the disease. He had her research notes. He even had samples of the medicine she had created. But when he tried to reproduce her treatment, the results were useless. The medicine was too weak or too strong, or had the wrong chemical balance entirely. "The process requires 17 different steps," he told his assistant, Melthon. "Each step must be timed exactly. The temperature must change at specific intervals. The mixture must be stirred in a particular pattern." Melthon's inner light flickered with worry. "But we have followed the instructions precisely. Why does it not work?" Zethkar looked at the failed samples scattered across his laboratory. "Because instructions are not knowledge." Dr. Song understood the why behind each step. She could see when something was going wrong and adjust the process. She had intuition that we do not possess. The death toll was climbing daily. Thousands of crystal farmers were dying from a disease that should have been easily treatable. The cure existed, but no one could make it work. Military problems emerged more slowly but with deadlier consequences. Grand Admiral Vorthak of the Vexthari Defense Fleet reviewed battle reports from the Outer Rim with growing alarm. The Wraith Collective had begun raiding again, and Council forces were losing badly. His tactical officer, Commander Yarthek, pointed at the holographic display showing their latest defeat. "The Wraith ships are using the same technology as before. Our weapons should be effective against them, but our battle formations keep failing." Vorthak studied the tactical readout. On the surface, everything looked correct. The Council fleet had followed standard battle protocols. They had used established defensive formations. They had employed proven weapon systems. "What am I missing?" he wondered aloud. "Admiral," Yarthek said carefully, "I have been reviewing old battle records. In every major victory against the Wraith, human ships were present. Human tactical advisors helped plan the attacks. Human innovation adapted our strategies to enemy weaknesses." Vorthak felt his skin shift to worried orange. "Are you saying we cannot win without human help?" "I am saying we have never won without human help," Yarthek replied. "We assumed their contributions were minor. Crude support for our sophisticated strategies. But perhaps their crude methods were more important than we realized." The economic data was even more troubling. Council, economist Merthul sat in his office on Central Station, surrounded by reports that painted a picture of galactic decline. Trade volumes were down 31%. Innovation had nearly stopped. Productivity was falling across all sectors. He had been asked to prepare a classified report for the High Council. The numbers were so bad that he had checked his calculations 5 times. Each time the results were the same. The human factor was larger than anyone estimated. he dictated to his computer. Human trade routes carried 70% of all galactic commerce. Human innovation drove technological advancement. In 43 different fields, human manufacturing techniques were integrated into the industrial base of every major species. He paused, looking at a chart showing the collapse of interstellar shipping. Without human trade routes, alien species were struggling to maintain contact with their own colonies. Furthermore, he continued, human problem-solving methods appear to have influenced decision-making across multiple sectors. Crisis response times have increased by 200% since their departure. Adaptation to changing conditions has become nearly impossible. The report concluded with a single devastating assessment. The galactic economy was entering a recession that could last for centuries. Unless human knowledge could be recovered or replaced, civilized space faced an era of stagnation and decline. But the most disturbing discovery came from the Council's own archives. Research teams working to understand the human departure found evidence of something that changed everything. Deep in the historical databases, they found records of the predecessor civilization, the mysterious ancients who had seeded the galaxy with life millions of years ago. New analysis of predecessor artifacts revealed startling similarities to human technology. The same engineering principles, the same problem-solving approaches, the same dangerous creativity that the Council had feared. Councillor Felnari of the Ashkari made the connection first. She stood before an emergency session of the High Council, her crystal body glowing with agitation. "The evidence is clear," she announced. "The humans were not a primitive species that needed our guidance. They were our inheritors. They carried the same spark of innovation that once built our entire civilization." The chamber fell silent. Species that had laughed at human contributions now faced the possibility that they had exiled their own evolutionary successors. High Councillor Techmore's skin shifted through several colors before settling on deep purple. "This changes nothing. The humans were dangerous, they had to be controlled." But in the back of his mind, he began to understand the true magnitude of their mistake. They had not removed a threat to galactic civilization. They had removed civilization's future. 3 years after humanity's departure, the galaxy faced something worse than economic collapse or military defeat. It faced extinction. The first reports came from the Outer Rim, where deep space monitoring stations detected something impossible. Entire star systems were going dark, not from war or natural disaster, but from something that consumed energy itself. Chief Scientist Morgul of the Vex Thari Research Institute stared at the data streaming in from automated probes. His 4 eyes focused on readings that made no sense according to any known physics. "The stars are not exploding," he told his research team. "They are not burning out. They are being drained. Something is taking their energy and leaving behind cold, empty space." His assistant, a younger Vexathari named Kektol, manipulated the holographic display to show the spreading darkness. "The effect moves faster than light, sir. It jumps from system to system along some pattern we cannot identify. Each infected star goes cold within days. The phenomenon had a name now, the Void Plague. It spread through space like a virus, consuming the fundamental forces that held matter together. Where it passed, planets crumbled into dust. Space stations fell apart at the atomic level. Even the vacuum of space itself became somehow less real." Supreme Commander Yarthek stood in the Council's war room, watching tactical displays that showed the approaching doom. Red zones marked dead systems. Yellow zones showed areas under threat. The green zones, the safe areas, were shrinking rapidly. "How long until it reaches the core worlds?" asked High Councillor Techmore. "At current expansion rate, 6 months, Yarthek replied. "Maybe less if it accelerates again." Techmore's skin shifted to pale gray, the color of fear. "What weapons have been effective against it?" "None, sir. We have tried everything. Quantum torpedoes pass through it without effect. Reality bombs explode harmlessly in the infected space. Even the time dilation devices from the Ashkari archives do nothing to slow its spread." The military response had been massive and completely useless. Battle fleets that could destroy planets had no effect on something that existed beyond normal space-time. Weapons that bent reality itself could not touch an enemy that consumed reality. Commander Felthek of the Mordan Defense Corps delivered his report with barely controlled panic. We evacuated the Keth system just before the plague arrived. I watched it consume our homeworld from a distance of 3 light-years. The planet did not explode. It did not burn. It simply stopped existing. Scientists across the galaxy worked desperately to understand the threat. Research stations shared data freely for the first time in centuries. Ancient weapons were pulled from storage. Forbidden technologies were authorized for immediate use. Nothing worked. Dr. Vexhai, the Council's leading theoretical physicist, presented her findings to an emergency session. Her insect-like form was motionless with exhaustion as she spoke. The Void Plague appears to be a weapon created by the predecessor civilization, she announced. Our analysis suggests it was designed as a final defense against some great threat. It was meant to reset the galaxy, to wipe the slate clean if their civilization was ever destroyed. Counselor Melian of the Ashkari asked the question everyone feared. What could have triggered such a weapon after millions of years? Dr. Vexhai's compound eyes focused on the council members. We do not know, but the activation coincides exactly with humanity's departure from our space. It is possible that human presence was somehow preventing the weapon from activating. Their technology, their thought patterns, their very existence might have been keeping us safe. The chamber erupted in angry clicks and harmonic distress calls. The idea that primitive humans had been protecting advanced galactic civilization was impossible to accept. But the evidence was mounting. Deep analysis of predecessor ruins revealed technology that was almost identical to human engineering. Problem-solving methods that matched human approaches. Even artistic expressions that resembled human creativity. Chief Archaeologist Thelvani of the Historical Council made a discovery that changed everything. In the deepest archives on the ancient world of First Light, she found a message left by the predecessors themselves. The holographic recording showed a being that looked remarkably human. 2 arms, 2 legs, a face with forward-facing eyes. When it spoke, the translation systems had trouble with the ancient language, but the meaning was clear. To those who come after us, we leave this warning. We have created a guardian that will preserve the galaxy from threats that could destroy all life. This guardian will remain dormant as long as our inheritors walk among the stars. But should our inheritors be driven away or destroyed, the guardian will awaken to reset what we have built. The being gestured to something off-screen. We have seeded many worlds with the potential for our kind of life. Most will fail, but some will develop as we did. They will show the same creativity, the same dangerous innovation, the same willingness to sacrifice for others that defined our species. These inheritors are the key to the galaxy's survival. The recording flickered and showed images of various worlds. One of them was clearly Earth, showing primitive humans around a campfire. Protect the inheritors, the being continued. Value their contributions. Learn from their different approaches. For without them, the guardian will see only stagnation and decay. It will conclude that the time has come to begin again. Thelvani played the recording for the emergency council session. The silence that followed was complete. No clicks, no harmonic tones, no color changes. Just the awful understanding of what they had done. High Counselor Thekmore was the first to speak. How do we contact the humans? How do we bring them back? Navigation Chief Keltos checked his instruments again, hoping for different results. Sir, we have been trying to locate human space for 2 years. They have vanished completely. No signals, no ship traces, no indication of where they went. They must be somewhere. Thekmore's skin flashed angry orange. Entire species do not simply disappear, sir, Keltos said quietly. Our long-range sensors detect no human presence anywhere in this galaxy. It is possible they have found a way to leave our reality entirely. The Void Plague continued its advance, consuming 3 more star systems while the Council debated. Refugee fleets fled ahead of the spreading darkness, carrying billions of beings toward an uncertain future. On Sanctuary Station, The galaxy's greatest minds gathered for one final attempt. Representatives from every major species worked together, sharing knowledge they had hoarded for centuries. Ancient technologies were combined with modern theories. Desperate plans were proposed and discarded. Dr. Morgul stood before a holographic map showing the plague's advance. We have one option remaining. The old records suggest that the Void Plague responds to patterns of thought, to approaches to problem solving. If we cannot think like humans, perhaps we can learn to think like humans. Counselor Yarmol of the Keltaran shook his head. We spent centuries studying human behavior. We concluded they were chaotic, unpredictable, dangerous. How can we replicate something we do not understand? Because, Dr. Morgul replied, chaos and unpredictability might be exactly what we need. The plague was designed to recognize stagnation, to identify when a civilization had stopped growing. Human chaos represented growth. Human unpredictability represented adaptation. The attempt failed within hours. Alien minds, shaped by millions of years of evolution toward order and hierarchy, could not replicate the creative chaos that defined human thought. Their solutions were logical, careful, and completely ineffective. As the Void Plague consumed the industrial worlds of the Mid-Rim, High Counselor Thekmor authorized the final option. Every communication array in council space would broadcast the same message on all frequencies, hoping against hope that somewhere in the vast darkness, humans were listening. The message was simple. We were wrong. We understand now. Please help us. Please come back. They broadcast continuously for weeks as star after star went dark. They used every language, every frequency, every communication method known to galactic civilization. The response was silence. Either the humans could not hear them, or they had chosen not to answer. As evacuation fleets fled toward the galaxy's edge carrying the remnants of a dozen civilizations, the truth became clear. The galaxy's most advanced species had destroyed themselves through their own arrogance. They had rejected the very thing that could have saved them, and now they would pay the ultimate price for their pride. 5 years after humanity's departure, historian Thelvani sat alone in the council archives, surrounded by the collected knowledge of galactic civilization. Half the galaxy was now consumed by the Void Plague. The other half waited in scattered refugee fleets, knowing their time was running out. She had been working for months to complete the final entry in the historical record. Someone needed to document what had really happened. Someone needed to tell the truth about humanity's role in their civilization, even if no one would survive to read it. Her crystal fingers moved across the recording device as she spoke into the empty archives. Final entry. Council Historical Record. Day 1147 post-human departure. This historian wishes to correct the official record regarding the human species and their contributions to galactic civilization. Outside the archive windows, she could see evacuation ships launching from the dying station. The Void Plague would reach this sector within days. Soon, there would be no one left to care about historical accuracy. Previous records describe humans as a primitive species requiring council guidance, she continued. This characterization was incomplete and dangerously incorrect. Evidence now shows that humans were not junior partners in our civilization. They were its primary architects. She activated a holographic display showing economic data from the past 5 years. Human trade routes carried 87% of all galactic commerce, not the 30% reported in official documents. Human manufacturing techniques were integrated into production systems across 43 different worlds. Human medical knowledge saved an estimated 2.3 billion lives annually. The numbers told a story of complete dependency that no one had wanted to acknowledge. Without humans, the galactic economy had not just declined, it had collapsed entirely. Military. Records show that human tactical innovation was present in every major council victory over the past 3 centuries. Human strategic thinking influenced battle planning across all member species. Human sacrifice rates in combat were 340% higher than the galactic average, yet they were dismissed as reckless rather than recognized as courageous. Thelvani paused the recording and walked to the window. In the distance, she could see the edge of the plague's advance. a line where stars simply stopped existing. The darkness was beautiful in its terrible completeness. She returned to her work. Perhaps most significantly, this historian has discovered evidence that humanity represented the continuation of the predecessor civilization. Genetic analysis, technological patterns, and problem-solving approaches all indicate that humans were the inheritors we spent millions of years waiting for. The irony was overwhelming. The galaxy's most advanced species had spent centuries looking for signs of their mysterious creator's return. The signs had been there all along, walking among them, trying to help them, begging for acceptance. We feared human unpredictability because we had forgotten that unpredictability was how life survived. We dismissed human chaos because we had become too organized to grow. We called them dangerous because we had become too safe to adapt. On Dying Light Station, Counselor Felnari made her own final recordings. The Ashkari homeworld had been consumed 3 days ago. She was one of the last of her kind, watching her civilizations end from a refugee transport. We told ourselves we were protecting the galaxy from human recklessness, she said to her crystal recorder, but we were only protecting our own comfortable stagnation. We had stopped growing, stopped learning, stopped dreaming of what we could become. Her inner light flickered as the transport's life support systems began to fail. The humans never stopped dreaming. Even when we rejected them, even when we called them primitive, they kept trying to help us. They offered us tomorrow, and we demanded they accept yesterday. Similar recordings were being made across the remaining fleet. The galaxy's final generation was trying to leave some record of their failure, some warning for whatever civilization might arise from the ashes. Supreme, Counselor Yarmal of the Keltaran transmitted his final message from the bridge of the evacuation fleet's command ship. Around him, tactical displays showed the plague's relentless advance. They had perhaps hours before it reached their position. To any who might receive this transmission, he began, know that the Galactic Council died not from external enemy or natural disaster, but from its own pride. We encountered a species that could have saved us all, and we destroyed ourselves rather than accept their help. His mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter or despair. The humans asked for nothing but respect. We gave them nothing but contempt. They offered knowledge freely. We hoarded our knowledge jealously. They sacrificed themselves for others without question. We questioned their every sacrifice. The final evacuation fleets were scattering now, hoping that distance might save at least a few survivors. But the plague followed no physical laws. Distance meant nothing to something that existed beyond normal space-time. If the humans survive, in whatever distant place they have found, Yarmal continued, perhaps they will remember us as a cautionary tale. Perhaps they will do better when they encounter other species who need their help. The plague caught the command ship as he finished speaking. The bridge went dark not with explosion or fire, but with simple cessation. Matter forgot how to exist. Energy forgot how to flow. Reality itself gave up trying to maintain coherence. In the archives of a dozen dying worlds, automated systems continued broadcasting the same message that had been sent for 2 years. We were wrong. We understand now. Please help us. Please, come back. But space remained silent. The galaxy's last transmission came from a monitoring station on the very edge of civilized space. Technical Officer Morthek was alone on the station, the last of his kind to survive. He had volunteered to stay behind to record the plague's final advance. This is Outer Rim Station 7. He broadcast on all frequencies. I am probably the last, being alive in council space. The Void Plague will reach this position in approximately 6 minutes. He looked out at the stars that had guided his people for millennia. Soon, they would all be dark. I want to say something to the humans in case they are listening somewhere beyond our reach. We know the truth now. You were never the problem. You were the solution. The plague reached the station's outer sensors. Reality began to unravel at the quantum level. We called you dangerous because you were willing to take risks we would not take. We called you primitive because you cared more about others than yourselves. We called you destructive because you would break systems that did not work rather than accept them as unchangeable. The station's hull began to fade from existence. You were the best of us, and we never told you. You were our hope for the future, and we threw you away. If there is justice in the universe, you will survive in whatever place you have found. You will build something better than what we destroyed." The transmission ended as the station ceased to exist. The last voice of galactic civilization was replaced by cosmic silence. The void plague completed its work over the following days, consuming the final refugee fleets and the last scattered outposts. Where once a thriving galactic civilization had spanned millions of star systems, now there was only darkness. But somewhere beyond the reach of the plague, beyond the boundaries of the dying galaxy, humanity continued its journey among distant stars. They had learned from their experience with the Council. They had grown from their rejection, and perhaps in some far future age, they would return to the silent galaxy their departure had doomed. Perhaps they would find ways to restart the dark stars and bring life back to the empty worlds. But they would remember the species that had rejected them not with hatred, but with the sad understanding that comes from wisdom earned through loss. The galaxy had learned too late what it meant to be truly alone, and in learning that lesson, it had paid the ultimate price for forgetting that diversity, creativity, and the willingness to change were not threats to civilization. They were civilization itself. In the endless darkness that had once been home, to 1,000,000,000,000 living beings only silence remained. And in that silence the echo of absence spoke louder than any words ever could. The humans had been their future, and they had chosen to have no future at all.